Good evening. At this time, if you would, please silence your cell phones. And be advised that these proceedings are being recorded. For those physically present in the council chamber who desire to address the City Council during this meeting, please complete a request to speak form and present it to our city clerk. Speaking forms are located by the entrance there. Speakers that are here with us tonight, and thank you for being here, and also those participating with us via Zoom, will be called upon at the appropriate time, and each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. This time I will call to order and convene the regular meeting of the City Council for Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. And tonight we will be closing in memory of resident Dr. Tom Rivera. Many in the region have thought of him and been mentored by him. And so we will be closing in his memory tonight. The invocation will be given by Pastor Manuel Hinojosa of the Living Word Inland Empire. And immediately following that, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Sylvia Robles. So if you would please now stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father God, we come before you right now, and we just ask you, Lord, just to move upon this city council today. We ask you right now that they may be governed by you, and they be moved by you. And we ask you for the health and the prosperity of all those that are involved. We pray for the mayor right now, that you just give him strength and wisdom, that she or he will be governed by you and only you, that the authority only comes from you. As we just thank you today for everything that you have given us in prosperity today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me to the Pledge of Allegiance to our lovely country. Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Manuel. Thank you, Councilmember Robles.
It's like one cockroach per meeting. Again? I moved the chair, but the bit.
All right. And now that you're situated and you have your bug problem under control, Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen.
I'm present.
Councilmember Wilson.
I'm here.
Councilmember Robles.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Present.
And Mayor McNaboe.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any reordering of, additions to, or removal of items from the agenda tonight?
I'd like to remove item number 7, please.
Just totally remove it, or
Totally remove it.
Okay.
I'll be attending the meeting, so we don't need to worry about proxy.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have no special presentations tonight, and we'll move to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any requests to remove items for discussion at this time? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar minus item number 7.
I'll move the consent calendar minus item number 7, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Allen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Hussey. May we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes.
Councilmember Robles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Yes.
Mayor McNaboe.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have requests to speak during this time?
No,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
All right, so I will close that public comment and move on to our first item of business tonight, which is a public hearing. That's item E1, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, California, establishing objective standards for implementation of Senate Bill number 9 pertaining to urban lot splits and 2-unit developments, updating the city's regulations for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, And we have Heidi Aguirre, our Associate Planner, who will give us the staff report tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the council. This presentation is a public hearing proposing an ordinance to establish the regulations for urban lot splits and two-unit developments in accordance with Senate Bill number 9. And we are also proposing an ordinance to amend the regulations for the city's accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. This item supports Vision Statement 2030, Vision Statement, Goal number 3, to promote economic development by updating zoning and development code in preparation for future growth, and to preserve and protect our community and its exceptional quality of life through thoughtful planning. To briefly outline Senate Bill 9, it became effective on January 1st, 2022. It requires local agencies the ministerial approval of projects proposing up to 2 primary dwelling units per parcel in a single-family residential zone. It also requires local agencies the ministerial approval of lot splits in a single-family residential zone and allowed up to 2 units to be constructed on each of those resulting parcels. The legislation also allows cities to establish objective standards as long as the standards are not in conflict with the state law. On January 25th, 2022, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance and established the objective standards for regulations of lot splits and new unit developments under the SB 9 legislation. At the meeting, the City Council directed staff to bring back a regular ordinance to be specifically reviewed by the Planning Commission, with recommendations to be approved by the City Council, establishing the requirements for the SB 9 projects, and also directed staff to update the municipal code requirements for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. At the urgency meeting that we had with the City Council, there were multiple comments that were further to be analyzed by staff and to be included in the ordinance and provide clarification on the legislation requirements. Some of the items that the council discussed that they included the minimum setback requirements, sewer and water requirements, rental program requirements, courtesy notification to the adjacent property owners, the replacement of mature trees being removed, parking requirements, and also development impact fees. Staff undertook further analysis on the SB 9 and ADU legislation in response to the City Council comments, and on March 3rd, 2022, the Planning Commission adopted a public hearing meeting and voted unanimously 4-0, adopting a resolution and recommending the City Council to adopt the proposed ordinances establishing the SB 9 standards and updating our ADU regulations. The Planning Commission did make additional comments and recommendations. Some of the requirements that they included were in relation to sewer and on-site wastewater treatment systems, water line connections, and they also had additional parking requirements. Since the legislation requirements have already been presented, discussed, and included on the urgency ordinance approved by Council, tonight's presentation, we're only going to focus on those additional standards that were incorporated in response to the City Council and also in response to the Planning Commission. And we're going to start with the SB 9 lot split requirements. Courtesy notice. The Council asked staff about sending a notification to adjacent property owners when an SB 9 project is being proposed. We have included a requirement that states that at least 7 days prior to making a determination on an application for an urban lot split, the city engineer shall mail a courtesy notice to the owners of each property immediately adjacent to the property where the proposed lot split will be located, informing the owners of the submitted application. I do want to keep in mind that this is only a courtesy notice. Residents are not allowed to comment, and they're not allowed to be involved on the approval process. Limitation on development of vacant parcels created by an urban lot split. If an urban lot split results in the creation of a vacant land or a vacant parcel, the only permitted use for such parcel is going to be an SB 9 unit, and it's going to have to be built pursuant of the requirements that we are proposing tonight. Deed restriction and affordable rent requirements. The owner of a parcel to be divided must execute a deed restriction in which to be recorded that each one of the resulting parcels has to be recorded at the cost of the property owner, and it will limit the use of the parcel in accordance with the city requirements. It will also include that a second unit or a two-unit development shall only be used and developed in accordance with the requirements of this chapter, but not limited to the development standards, and it's going to prohibit short-term rentals. It's also going to include that second units and both units of a two-unit development, if rented, shall only be rented to affordable rent for lower-income households, as defined by the Health and Safety Code, for a minimum of 55 years. Now we're moving to the SB9 unit requirements. For the SB9 units, there were additional sitting standards that were included based on the City Council comments as well. And just like on the SB9 lots, we're also going to mail a courtesy notice when there's a unit that is going to be constructed. And it's going to be the same requirement within 7 days before making a determination of the approval. The City Council was concerned about the setback requirements. The legislation does restrict the city to a minimum 4 setback requirement on the rear and on the sides. However, a setback has been included, requiring that at least 15 feet separation between all the detached structures of the units on one parcel. That includes second units, primary units, both units of a two-unit development, if they're not attached, and it's also going to include detached accessory dwelling units. We're going to require this 15 feet setback between the unit structures as long as we are in compliance with the state requirements, and if the lot allows it. If we have a smaller lot, we have to abide by the state requirements and just have the minimum 4 feet setback. The council also wanted to incorporate requirements for the removal of trees that is caused by the construction of an SB9 unit. We included a standard that states if the construction of an accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit will result in the removal of 1 or 2 more trees with a trunk diameter of 6 inches or greater. A condition of approval will be before obtaining a certificate of occupancy that the owner shall plant a brand new tree, 24-inch box in size. And we also have a requirement that the proposed project site shall have a minimum of 1 tree per unit that is in the parcel. City Council also asked about adding development impact fees as a condition of receiving a certificate of occupancy for a second unit or a 2-unit development. The applicant shall pay development impact fees in an amount established by a City Council resolution. As of right now, the Building and Safety Division will be working in preparing a development impact fee study analysis that will be presented to the Council at a future date for approval. This analysis is going to include the development impact fees for SB9 units and for ADU projects as permitted by the state. In the meantime, the city will not be able to collect development impact fees on ADUs or SB9 units until this fee amendment has been approved by council. As of today, also ADU units and SB9 units, and also additions that are 500 square feet or less in size, only pay school fees, but those fees go straight to Colton Joint Unified School District. So this requirement has been included in anticipation for the schedule fee amendment. The council also asked if there's a way to make sure that rental properties under SB9 are included as part of our city rental program. A requirement has been included and states that a second unit and both units of a 2-unit development shall not be rented for less than 31 consecutive days. It also includes that unless the owner of the property provides the city with an annual certification that the unit is owner-occupied, the second unit and both units in a 2-unit development shall be assumed to be rental and they will be required to comply with the non-owner occupied rental property program that we have established in the city. Also, a second primary unit might not be turned into a condominium or otherwise sold separately. City Council also commented regarding the sewer capacity testing and on existing sewer lines, and the Planning Commission also added requirements in regard to the testing capacity to existing wastewater treatment systems in compliance with the California Plumbing Code and also in compliance with the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board and other objective city sewer or septic system requirements. The requirements that we have included to cover the wastewater system include that prior to the issuance of a building permit for a second unit, either unit of a two-unit development, the city engineer shall inspect the existing sewer lines and/or the on-site wastewater treatment system on the parcel. As part of this inspection, the city engineer may, if applicable, require documentation for the percolation tests completed within the last 5 years, or if the percolation test has been recertified within the last 10 years. If the city engineer then determines that the addition of the new unit or the units would result in a violation of the requirements of the California Plumbing Code, the requirements of the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board, and other objective city sewer or septic system requirements, then the city shall impose a condition of approval on the development that to ensure that the necessary compliance with the sewer requirements are being met. A second point that has been included as part of the wastewater capacity, also if the water relies on an on-site wastewater treatment system, and a proposed new unit would be located only on the part of the parcel that could accommodate a new on-site wastewater system treatment replacement, then the city shall require that all the proposed units on the parcel need to be disconnected from the wastewater system and connected to the sewer line. And the third point is that a second unit and both units in a two-unit development shall have a separate connection to the main water line in the street, and the applicant shall submit plans for compliance to the Riverside Highland Water Company for review and approval. Another point that was brought up by the City Council was a lot of concerns about the parking requirements. The state does limit the city to require only one parking space per unit unless exemptions by the state are met. Planning Commission also echoed the council's concerns regarding the parking and included further requirements. So now the requirement is going to be that one new on-site off-street parking space is required for a second unit, and one new on-site off-street parking space per unit is required for each unit of a two-unit development. But the added part is that such parking spaces shall be in addition to all the existing parking spaces on the parcel. Additional city standards incorporated to the SB units is going to include that the development will have to be approved through the administrative site and architectural review process. Units cannot be larger than 800 square feet, cannot be taller than 16 feet high, and the development shall match the primary residence, and units cannot be constructed on the second story. City Council raised a couple of comments that staff could not include in this proposed ordinance because the city is limited by the legislation requirements. And the first comment is, how is SB 9 going to impact the city's two-car garage parking requirement? SB 9 legislation is not going to impact the city's two-car garage parking requirement because SB 9 units are not allowed in garages. However, pursuant to state requirements, the city cannot restrict the conversion of a garage into an ADU. So even though SB 9 units is not going to impact the garage requirements, ADU units will. And the second comment from council was, how is SB 9 going to impact the city's lot coverage? Unfortunately, the required lot coverage in the residential zoning will be impacted by this legislation, as the city cannot physically preclude the construction of SB9 units that are at least 800 square feet in size and that meet all the state requirements. And now we're moving to the ADU and junior ADU ordinance comments. Okay, the ADU ordinance includes a lot of the same requirements that we have already identified on the SB9 ordinance, and to avoid repetition, I have just listed the ones that are similar. So we have the same requirements as far for the removal and replacement of trees, known owner, occupy, and rental property programs requirements. Sewer and water requirements will be also the same, and as well as the parking requirements. There are size limitations to ADUs and junior ADUs included on the proposed ordinance. Junior ADUs cannot be larger than 500 square feet in size, and they have to be contained within the footprint of a single-family residential home. Detached ADUs will be limited to the following size requirements. A studio or a one-bedroom unit will be limited to 850 square feet in size. 2 or more bedroom units will be limited to 1,000 square feet in size. And that's for detached units. Now for attached ADUs, the requirement for a studio and one-bedroom unit will be 850 square feet or 50% of the floor area of the primary residence, whichever is less. And for 2 or more bedroom units, the size requirement will be 1,000 square feet or 50% of the primary dwelling unit. Once again, whichever is less will be the requirement. ADU and JADU additional city standards will include the limited height of 16 feet. It's going to prohibit the construction of ADUs or junior ADUs above the existing structures. However, existing second stories may be converted into ADUs and junior ADUs if the structure is existing. We may not add another story, but if there's a two-story, can be converted. There's a 15-feet separation also requirement between all the detached units on the parcel. ADUs and junior ADUs cannot be used for short-term rental, less than 31 days. ADUs and junior ADUs will be approved also through an administrative site and architectural review process. They also have to match the primary dwelling unit. However, manufactured homes are permitted as an ADU structure. Therefore, we have included design development standards specific for manufactured homes. We are going to ask that the applicant needs to match the house as close as possible, but if it's not possible because the materials are different, at least the color and the roofing should be the same. For the development impact fees, these are a little different. There are no impact fees imposed for an accessory dwelling unit that is less than 750 square feet. Any impact fees charged for accessory dwelling units that are larger than the 750 square feet will be charged proportionately to the square footage of the primary dwelling unit. Once again, the standard has been included in anticipation to the fee amendment. Both of these ordinances are exempt of the environmental review. The adoption of the SB9 regulation is not considered a project for the purpose of the California Environmental Quality Act, pursuant to Government Code Section 65852.21J and 66411.7N. In addition, the adoption of an ordinance regarding second units in a single-family or multifamily residential zone to implement the provisions of Government Code Sections 65852.2 and 65852.22 is exempt also from CEQA review pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21080.17. Therefore, the proposed ordinances do not require any environmental review under CEQA. There will be no fiscal impact, no expenditure on part of the city to adopt these two ordinances. The cost to administer the ordinances will be recovered in part through the application process. Staff recommends that the City Council first conducts this public hearing and also, after the public hearing, read by title only, waive further reading and introduce the proposed ordinances establishing the objective standards for implementation of Senate Bill Number 9 pertaining to urban lot splits and to unit developments, and updating the city's regulations for accessory dwelling units. This concludes staff presentation. We have our city attorney, Adrian Guerra, and also our building official, Luis Gordea. We are happy to respond to any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Aguirre. Before we go to questions, I want to give council an opportunity to announce any ex parte communications, conflicts of interest. And this is an opportunity, if you need to recuse yourself. Any statements that need to be made at this time? All right, then, are there questions of staff? Councilmember Allen.
Thank you for that comprehensive report. And so my first question has to do with the tree requirement. Is that requiring a tree for each dwelling unit? Is that only in the case that the lot gets split?
It's in both cases. If the lot gets either subdivided or if it, actually, no, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It's in the case that the lot gets split and then we are proposing 2 units on each lot because we are requiring 1 tree per unit on each lot. So if you have 2 units, the requirement would be to have 2.
Okay. Are you requiring that these trees be the trees the city authorizes for the right-of-way, or does it matter what the property
No.
owner?
Since this is going to be a tree that is going to be located on the actual property of the property owners, we're going to allow them to put a tree as long as, they replace it. Could be a fruit tree, could be a shade tree, but we want to start adding, the incorporation of trees into our housing residential zoning, especially if it's being removed due to one of the construction for an SB9 unit.
So if a property owner in Grand Terrace wants to add an ADU to their property, but they don't want to split the property, they just want the old traditional granny flat thing like we've always had for years.
Yes.
Are these new rules going to apply? And because have we in the past allowed ADUs on a second floor to be a second floor construction of an ADU?
We haven't.
Have we never allowed second floor construction?
We just haven't had that circumstance happen in the past. If it would have happened, we probably would have to allow it, but these requirements now restrict the construction of a second story. But if it's an existing 2-story residence, you might have an ADU conversion on your second story.
Right. The setback requirements that you have, are those also inclusive for the front of the, a lot of people, sometimes they don't think about the setback up there, but there's a city right away, and then I can picture somebody trying to fill their lots up and moving that structure close to the street.
No,
So
we're still going to respect our zoning front setback, which is 25-foot setback.
okay, from the curb?
From the property line.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Councilmember Robles?
I'm having a problem with several of these. The tree requirement. For example, someone puts an ADU, and there's, like in my case, I have a little old fruit tree and another little tree when I had a wrought iron for some privacy screening. So someone in my situation would have to tear down those trees and plant another one. For what reason, I have no idea, because a lot of people that would live in my neighborhood, they have pools or a lot of cement laid out. So where would they put a tree? And if there's concern about a tree canopy, the city has easements all over the city. So I find this onerous. The other issue is...
Okay, I'm going to ask if we can stick to questions at this point,
Well,
and we'll come back and...
if you would be uniform with that, like with Jeff Allen, for example, that would be nice.
Okay. And you can poke me next time I don't catch when he's not asking a question, but please, if we could stick to questions, especially since this is a public hearing, and I will come back to you after we hear the public and let you speak first, okay? All right. Any further questions of staff? Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
You mentioned the fact about, recovering costs, and the city wouldn't be out of any money. With the ADA units, me personally, I don't like them. I think it takes away from our way of life here when you're starting to split and put two units. But the question I have for you is can we have a different rate for ADU units instead of our standard cost that it takes for the ordinance to, for apply it?
We wanted to bring a fee schedule and propose the development impact fees for you guys tonight with this presentation. However, we were advised that we need to do a fee schedule analysis before we're able to do that. And that's going to take work to do, and I can have probably either my city attorney or the city manager elaborate on the process for that.
So just the fees, and I think she even had the language up there, they have to be proportional to the existing unit. So we have to go back and calculate what the fees would be for the existing unit, and then on a per square footage basis or some formula come to apply it, so that we can't block ADUs and say development fees are $1 million for every ADU. So they have to be some number that is consistent somehow with what we do.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember Wilson.
Mayor, if I might, I'd like to take a poll of the council members and how many council members actually understand the length and breadth of the changes and conditions that are being implemented if we actually approve this.
I'm going to ask that you hold that for our discussion after the public hearing is open and closed.
Okay.
And do you have questions of staff just for clarification?
I have other questions.
All right, thank you.
If you can look at E11-7, E11-7 and E11 additional study 2, they make no sense. Somewhere along the line, somebody slipped a cog when they were typing, and though they may be something that was a lift from a state of California requirement or a suggestion, the way it's worded really makes no sense at all. So
Which
if we
one?
could maybe fix those.
Can you
It's
repeat what packet
E11-7
page?
and E11 under additional study number 2. You read those sentences?
Can you,
What page?
I don't know, it doesn't make any difference to me. It's just E11-7 and E11.
could I get
around-
the page number you're referring
No,
to?
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have it, okay.
So you'll have to look for it.
All right.
It should have been fixed before it was put in. But also, here's the other problem. Since when does the city engineer have jurisdiction over personal property, private property? That's a ridiculous thought pattern. And I'll go ahead and let the mayor take it from here.
Well,
I have
your
so
question
much-
is,
there's so
since
much
when
wrong
it-
with this.
Since when is it, you're gonna stop it, since when is the city engineer allowed to have,
Public, have access to private property.
and I think that's a question for our city attorney.
There's so much wrong with this that I just can't even start.
That's okay. We'll get your question answered the best that our city attorney can right now, and if not, he'll come back to us.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that one. Let me take a look at the provision.
Okay. Councilmember Robles, you said you had further questions.
In the instance of adding additional parking spots, for example, there's some people with 3-car garages. So how does that fit with that?
The requirement, the state allows the requirement of 1 additional off-street parking space per unit being constructed, and we have identified on our ordinance that requirement has to be in addition to the existing parking already on the property. If the residence has a 3-car garage, that doesn't count towards these units. They would have to provide one off-street parking in addition to what it's already existing.
And how does this square with previous city councils allowing RVs of any class and size to be parked in driveways? So, since we're so concerned about parking.
For RV parking, the requirement is that you are able to park as long as you're perpendicular on your driveway, but you have to fit on your driveway. You cannot extend or encroach on the city right away.
Which is happening. This happens on a home in Honey Hills routinely.
That would be against our municipal code.
And what would be the point of notifying a resident of the ADU being built if they have no public hearing?
What we're going to do, and part of the requirement of the notifications, we use our system that we have, our mapping system. We pull up the residents that are directly adjacent to a proposed project, and we will mail those properties. The mailings will go to the property owner and also the resident, because sometimes some units are being rented.
But they don't have any recourse.
They don't.
So what's the point of sending them a notification if they have no recourse?
This requirement was just in response to our urgency meeting, and it was one of the items that the council brought up. We thought you guys wanted to include it. We are able to remove it.
Well, I mean, for the city attorney, so don't you think we'd notice people, they're going to think they have a recourse, and then they're going to want to be on the agenda, but they don't have a recourse?
Right now, we do have notification requirements for other type of applications. For example, our home occupation process, which is, it allows office businesses from the residential zone. We do send notifications. It would be kind of the similar process. They do not comment on the approval of the home occupation permit, but we do notify them so they're aware that a new business or office business is coming next to their property. And so we envision these notification being just very similar to that. It's just a courtesy notice to let them know in advance.
The purpose is then, if there's construction going on in the neighborhood, if something's happening, then the neighbors are aware of before that happens, so they're not showing up here or at City Hall, trying to get it stopped afterwards or asking questions afterwards. That way they know ahead of time, just like the home occupation. If there's activity happening there, then you know what's going on in your neighborhood as a courtesy to your neighbors.
Final question, why would someone with a 3-car garage be precluded from making one of those stalls a livable space?
They're not precluded to make it a livable space. Under the ADU ordinance requirements, you can turn a garage into a junior ADU if you want to, and that is required. And we wouldn't be able to, make the resident to provide another parking space to replace that one.
So if you could explain the logic to me about, say there's a 2,000 square foot home with 2 occupants that park 2 cars in their 2-car garage site, why would they be required to add an additional parking space off-site? Off-site. And how do you create an off-site parking?
A lot of the off-site street parking would be maybe just enlarging the driveway, which a lot of people do, just to accommodate a 3rd car, almost on the front area of the house adjacent to the existing garage. That requirement is if they're building a new unit. But as I understand your question, I think you mentioned if there's an existing 2-car garage for one single-family residential, why would they need to build another one?
Well, there'd be 3-car garage, and they would change their 3rd car garage into, and I think I've seen it on other streets, into a space.
Into a junior ADU. Then they would not be required to provide. For a junior ADU, there's no requirement to provide an off-street parking. But if you do an accessory dwelling unit, so one is a junior accessory dwelling unit, which you are allowed to do in your garage, it doesn't have the parking requirement. If you do an accessory dwelling unit, whether it's detached or attached to your home, it will require one off-street parking. There are a few exceptions for the parking requirements, and those are if you are within half a mile walking distance from a bus stop, or if you are within a block of a shared vehicle system, then you are not required to do the parking. And that's per state legislation.
Okay.
All right, any further questions? All right, seeing none, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Oh, Councilmember Allen, you have a question.
Yes, I do,
Okay.
Mayor.
Of staff.
That's correct.
All right.
Packet page 205, number 6, it says an urban lot split cannot be used to split a lot that was previously split by an urban lot split. And so my question is, we have some lots here in our city that were originally like 2-acre lots, 1.5 acres, 1 acre. Some of them may or may not have been split in the past, but they're still, those split lots are still really big. And so are those lots not eligible to be split again? If it's a 1-acre lot, say for example, or a 1.25 acre lot?
They are allowed to be split under the SB 9 because it just became effective at the beginning of the year, so we have to honor it as it is now. They would be allowed to be split and subdivided. The only requirement is that any of the resulting lots that are being split cannot be smaller than 1,200 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Last chance, questions? All right, seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. This is an opportunity for public to speak for or against this item. We have requests to speak at this time. Thank you, Ms. Aguirre. All right, do we have a request by Bobby Forbes?
Good evening. So I have quite a few questions. Hopefully I will be able to do them in a decent order. Distance of notification to the neighbors, 300 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, that something's going to go on because this is a business. I wonder about that because in my neighborhood the lots are big. We ran into that with all the industrial projects, that there was very poor notification. I wonder how this is going to impact the rental program since these are business. They are going to be non-owner occupied. And will they participate in the rental program and pay that fee every year and be inspected and have all the same requirements that every other rental in Grand Terrace has? And how is that going to be enforced by our already busy code enforcement officers? What about mailing address? Is the post office going to allow a secondary mailing address, or is everybody going to get the mail to the main house like they do currently on most ADUs because the post office wouldn't allow a second address? Off-site parking, I guess I'm confused about those words because off-site to me means out in the street. Mm-hmm. So how do I create off-site parking? It's the city's street. So I know there's not a lot of neighborhoods in Grand Terrace that people are going to really try to do this, but some people are going to. And what happened to our Grand Terrace minimum lot split of 7,200 square feet for a residential home? Maybe I missed something. I thought that was a requirement in the city of Grand Terrace. And then regarding two-story, there's very few two-stories until you get up towards the mountain. And we had an issue where a home wanted to be built in my neighborhood, 2 doors north of mine, that they wanted to put in a huge two-story home. There's no two-story homes in my neighborhood. So we had a meeting, and we were able to get that denied. So I wonder how that would go into effect if you have a two-story home, only one in a neighborhood such as out here on Vista Grande Way or Grand Terrace Road, and they wanted to do a two-story ADU or a two-story, one of these rental units, if it wasn't attached to the house. So I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Are there any other requests to speak at this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, I'm going to close public hearing. I do want staff to address the questions because I think they were all part of the staff report. So I'm going to close public hearing and let staff address those questions.
All right, thank Thank you. The first question in regard to the lot size requirements, I think you were concerned about the setbacks and the proximity to the neighbors on your first question. And so the minimum side setback we have by legislation is the 4-foot setback. Unfortunately, it's also the same 4-foot setback that we're required for the rear of the property. We're hoping on big parcels, like on the one that you reside, that wouldn't be an issue since this can be accommodated with plenty of space without being intrusive to the neighbor. As far as the notification, you had a question about the notifications?
How far out, since it's a business?
The notifications are going to be only for the adjacent residents where the project is going to be developed. So we're not going to do a radius notification like we do with our typical projects for planning. It's just the adjacent, only the next doors, front and rear. The rental program we did cover. We're going to assume that all these units are part of the rental program, and we are going to condition them to be included into a rental program through our standards. We're going to assume the rentals unless the owner gives us a certified annual letter that they are owner occupied and they're letting us know they have been occupied by the property owner. For the mailing addresses, these units will be issued a secondary address. So we will have a second address for these new units. The minimum lot size of 7,200 square feet lot will be impacted. There's no way we can restrict the construction. So if you have to subdivide 7,200 square feet, the requirement is either 40%, which is 40 and 60, or 50-50, which will keep both lots around the same size. And two-story homes, when you do an ADU unit, they can be utilized on a two-story residence if it's already existing. But we won't allow the construction of an ADU on top of a single-family residential house. You must have a two-story residence to be able to convert the second story.
Right, but
And then the off-site parking?
And then the off-site parking, maybe we just need clarification because we mean off the street.
Okay,
And
so off-street parking, not off-site parking?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for those clarifications. All right, so the public hearing has been closed, so we'll come back to council for deliberation and discussion. We'll start with Councilmember Robles, and then Councilmember Wilson will be next.
Well, I've been reading up somewhat on this, and I see for Palo Alto, which, you know, the average home is in excess of 3.5 million, they're using redwood prefab structures, and they're not up in arms about that not being an aesthetically compatible. So it seems like some of these rules are made to be in contra of having ADUs. For example, if you have a cement roof that's 35 years old, where are you going to get material for a cement roof, and why would you have a cement roof? Why would that cost factor? The off-street parking, off-site parking, it just, I don't, you know, this concern for parking is, I know in my neighborhood, if you would clean out your garage and use it as a garage, that helps a lot. I don't know why we would need a separate water line, you know, because, for example, I have a manufactured home and we're all on the same water and we get apportioned through a meter. But if it's your home and the homeowner assumes it, what's the problem? Tree requirements, I think, are just ridiculous. And then again, you know, as Councilman Wilson says, we have an engineer with a lot of discretion on some of these things, and I'm not comfortable with that. So that's all my concerns.
Thank you, Councilmember Robles. Councilmember Wilson.
Would this be the proper time to ask the council if they would like to poll and see if they understand maybe even 50% of what's being added and changed in this?
I think this is more appropriate than the time for questions, so yes.
Okay. Well, the reason why I'm concerned about this is this is good. This has the potential to really change our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And when this was first, brought forward to at the state level, there were a lot of architectural firms and builders at this meeting, and then the architects thought it was a snazzy idea, but then all they wanted to do was to get the fees from the state. But the people that actually build these kinds of projects and add things to stuff to over-densify say it'd be good if some of the people that had skin in the game actually were brought to the party. And I think I know why they asked that. If you could clarify for me exactly how many lots would be going on a single-family residential lot, and according to this, it's RH, R120, R110, and R17.2, because to me it sounded like we could subdivide a lot, which this is what this is. You're just subdividing a lot. You subdivide the lot, and if the lot's big enough, then according to this, and then I'm quoting here, something about up to 4 dwelling units on that lot. 4 dwelling units. So in other words, we can start out with a single-family residence in a 7,200 square foot lot, and if you can make the setbacks, you could technically have 4 dwelling units on that. Has anybody never been to San Bernardino?
Councilmember Wilson.
I'm asking a question, so I think that's fair.
Well, but we're having discussion here now. And what I'm going to say is that my understanding of this is that staff didn't put this together and bring it forward to say, isn't this a good idea that we do this? Staff brought this forward in response to SB 9, which is going to give us even less control over this process. And I don't know that we have the ability to say, no, you can't do this, and you can't lot split. And yes, I am aware of what it's going to do to our neighborhoods, but I believe that our ordinance at this time is meant to give us as much control over that density that we can have based on SB 9.
Mayor, not the way it's written. It's an aberration the way it's written. Unfortunately, there's too many Band-Aids in this. As you start to look at it here, tree replacement, a mature tree for a 24-inch box tree, what kind of good planning is that? And then, like I talked about before, city engineer on private property, they don't, the city engineer doesn't do anything with private calculations to determine whether or not a plumbing system will work for 2 units, or for that matter, 4 units. I mean, that's impossible. But I understand that there are restrictions that the state has put on us. What we're doing with it, though, could be really dangerous for some of these things. Like, for example, here, owner of the property must sign an affidavit stating intent to occupy a unit on one of the resulting parcels as their primary residence for 3 years after approval of a lot split. That's okay, because that's a state thing. But somewhere in here, there's also an item that talks about, yeah, here it is, about having to allow affordable. Let's see. And we've got I don't know what this rental for, there it is. Execute a deed requiring that SB 9 units may only be rented to lower income households at an affordable rent for 55 years? Where did that come? Those are our comments.
Are those our comments or those from SB 9?
No, it says it right in here, city council comment as it goes. I mean, I don't know.
Which one of our council members had that comment? I don't remember us having that discussion.
I'm just looking at it. It's just that it seems to me, let me back up a little bit then.
Because my understanding was SB 9 was all about affordable housing and getting more housing units. And so if that was something that council commented on, I don't remember us commenting on that, except that we were surprised that that was one of the provisions.
Legislation is either good or it's bad. This is bad legislation.
Okay. Well, and I would say
it takes the local control completely out of the hands of the locals. It is going to take my property values and destroy them. And after being here for 43 years, I don't think I deserve that. We need to have a workshop on this thing so that we understand each one of these things.
Mr. City Attorney.
Because a hodgepodge version of this is not going to serve us well.
Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The way you stated it, Mayor, is absolutely correct. this is first a creation of the state. The
Right.
state created SB
Understand
9,
that.
which allows for each residential property to be subdivided, and you can build 2 units on each property, effectively killing single-family residential zones.
Right.
So at the outset, that's what we're up against. Every city in the state is struggling to figure out how to deal with that mandate. Effectively, it's a mandate. What state law allows the cities to do is create objective standards to balance that.
For your
requirement.
particular situation.
Correct. Now, in one respect, they are objective standards. So in other words, there's no discretion. That's, in going back to Councilmember Robles' question about the roof line or the roof. The goal that we proposed in the ordinance and other cities are doing is to make it simple and make it clearly objective. It has to match what you have existing. So it's an easy check mark on the list. With respect to Councilmember Wilson's question about the engineering, with respect to the lot splits, city engineers are usually the individual, the official that identify, who sign off on this is a legal lot. So with respect to the lot splits, that's their jurisdiction. That is appropriate. With respect to the wastewater systems, sewers, they are identified as the individual who would do the inspection to ensure that they are in compliance with the plumbing code and whatever other codes that would be triggered. That would be their jurisdiction, only to really make sure it complies with state law.
City engineer is not authorized to do anything on private property. That's the reason why I'm concerned about Band-Aiding something and making it worse. I know we're stuck with some of these requirements. How it got slipped in, I have no idea. And it would do us a lot of good to vote these people out and get some people in that had some common sense. But for right now, we have to live with this.
Right.
And there are some things in here that are just not, it's not taping it together very well. Okay, so I'm just thinking it would be better for us to have some kind of a workshop, so at least we have a general understanding of what we're doing. Because if I was working for the city of Grand Terrace, somebody asked me to administrate this stuff, I'd go, I don't know, you're reading it just like I am, but, okay.
Right.
See, it just seems to make more sense if we get an opportunity to get a better understanding here. Otherwise, we're just doing a rubber stamp.
Mayor?
Mr. City Attorney.
So a couple of thoughts. Number one is SB 9 took effect January 1. So if we had no ordinance in place, anybody could come in, do their lot splits, put in whatever units they want, up to 2, and we would have no leverage, no authority whatsoever. So we did adopt the urgency ordinance earlier this year. That is in effect. So with respect to SB 9, we do have an ordinance in place already. If the council would like to do a study session, explore this a little more, have more discussion, we can. We're not under any time constraint because the urgency ordinance is still in effect. With respect to the ADU ordinance, we do have an ordinance in place, but it is outdated. So that one, obviously, we would like to get adopted sooner than later. But again, we're not under a time constraint there either.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well,
Council-
that's just what it's just a part of my comments. It's just that it's amazing. I was reading through it. After 21 years on a planning commission, and I can't understand it. I've got a certificate of building and safety for plan check as well as inspection. A lot of this made no sense. So it's got to be a tool we can actually use and not make it worse.
Councilmember Robles.
Well, I was born and raised in San Bernardino. I moved to Grand Terrace when I was 25, which was in 1977. So I've been around here when it was not that many Hispanic people here. And it's just, as far as, now I understand not in my backyard issues. I mean, in San Bernardino was a lovely city at one time. And the homes that were close together, were quite lovely for decades. And it provided housing for some of us young marrieds until we bought our own homes. There was no issue with it. Now, demographics have changed. You know, you have a lot of poverty. I don't know if necessarily poverty ends up being other certain things, I don't know. I know that when I bought my home near the mountain, I looked at elevations, and elevations didn't have a Class A mortar home in front of them. But there's a lot of people in this city that want their Class A mortar home right there in front, and I think it's unsightly. I dislike that more than I have the thought of an ADU with a nice family or a nice couple or somebody's grandparent. I mean, there's people on this dais that have had their family living in a junior studio situation. So I don't see what we're all frightened about.
It sounds like you're giving a message about code enforcement and our parking violations in the city as well.
You know, so I would like to go ahead and have a workshop. I think I've seen some ADUs in the pipeline in your reports, and there's some cities that are working on ADUs. I just know that in some tourist destinations, which we're really not, but my understanding from a medical student relative is that there's a lot of people in this locale that need short-term housing and are looking for this just kind of a lodging. So I'll end with that before I continue to get told what I think or what I'm asking or whatever.
Councilmember Allen and then Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
I just want to say that I support Councilmember Robles, what she's saying. That's all.
Mayor Pro Tem?
You know what, when you read this, and it's confusing me, and then like the comments, I don't remember some of these comments on here, but I'm with Councilmember Wilson. We need to do a workshop. We don't want to make a haste decision, and we have an emergency ordinance already established. And this is going to be a decision that's going to affect generations from generations. So I think the workshop's feasible, and then bring in experts. I mean, I'm concerned if we do make a haste decision and something happens, and I love Grand Terrace. I want to do what's best for everybody here, and that's why we were voted in to make these hard decisions and make the right decisions. So I think a workshop's feasible. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. I would say that some of the ordinances that we have in place right now are very difficult for us to enforce. And I think that with anything that we as a council vote to put in place, there has to be a plan for enforcement and helping those that come to the counter understand exactly what they need to do to move forward. And so if that means having a workshop so that we can work out some of those issues up front, I think that's a good idea. So is there a motion for us to, instead of taking action on this, move to a workshop?
Unless we have a date certain in mind, which I don't think we do at this time, I would recommend a motion to continue these ordinances to a date uncertain, okay. And we will renotice when it comes back to the City Council.
And that would be in the form of a workshop instead of so much a public hearing?
Well, we would do a workshop separately. We would not do we wouldn't do it as an adoption of an ordinance.
Right. It would just be the workshop to have the discussion and to work through things, and then it would come back to council to be voted on.
That is correct, and
okay.
We would renotice that second meeting.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Wilson to continue to a date uncertain, and then have a workshop to discuss this further, and we have a second by Councilmember Allen. Any further discussion?
One item, Mayor. Would it be possible, if we're going to have the workshop, would it be enriching to the purpose of the workshop to maybe do this as a joint workshop?
With Planning Commission?
Yeah, Planning and Building.
All right.
With Planning Commission.
I think that would be good. They might have questions. Okay. And they might have some pertinent positions to bring forward as well. All right, so we have a motion and a second I don't think adding to the planning commission really makes it an amendment of the motion.
I would agree.
Okay, we have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes.
Councilmember Robles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hesse.
Yes.
Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. So we have no unfinished business. We have new business. First item is considered a request by the Historical and Cultural Activities Committee to sell wine as part of a paint and sip class at its art show on May 7th, 2022. Can we have paint and sip as part of the council meetings maybe in the future for items like this?
Oh, no.
And City Clerk Deborah Thomas will give us our staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. For the record, Deborah Thomas, City Clerk. Before you this evening is your consideration of a request by the Historical and Cultural Activities Committee to sell wine as part of their paint and sip, as part of a paint and sip class at its art show that's scheduled for May 7th, 2022. This report supports our mission to preserve and protect our community and its exceptional quality of life through thoughtful planning within the constraints of fiscally responsible government. The Historical and Cultural Committee will be hosting its 38th annual art show on May 7th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. here at City Hall. The art show recognizes and showcases the artistic talents of the Grand Terrace students and residents and those who work in the city. The art show offers arts and crafts time for children and would like to offer a paint and sip for adults aged 21 and older. This is going to be a new fundraising element that they'd like to add to the art show, and it will be hosted by the committee and will be conducted in the City Hall lobby. It's a professionally led painting class for a fee, and it's accompanied by wine or other beverages, and they will have a professional bartender serving, as well as only allowing 2 drink tickets per person. It will be for age 21 and older only, and no children will be allowed in the area. The committee will be applying for a 1-day alcoholic beverage and control pour license for its special event and a facilities use permit as well. The City Council, in its municipal code, prohibits possession and or consumption of alcoholic beverages, but also authorizes the council to allow alcohol use in conjunction with a special event. The committee has requested that the council consider allowing the alcohol sales and consumption during this art show, and this will be conducted for about 1 hour to 1.5 hours. The municipal code states the consumption or possession, the offering, giving, or furnishing, or causing the offering, giving, or furnishing of alcoholic or intoxicating beverages may be expressly permitted by authorization from the City Council in any municipally owned, leased, or operated public building or facility for special public events or meetings, or for conferences or conventions when not otherwise expressly prohibited by other local ordinance, provided that such authorization shall be requested in writing, and if granted, shall be subject to conditions and all rules and regulations and ordinances of the city, and may be modified or summarily revoked at any time by the City Council, City Manager, Chief of Police without cause or the right to notice or hearing. At this time, the Historical and Cultural Committee is asking your consideration to adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace authorizing the consumption, possession, the offering, giving, or furnishing of causing the offering, giving, or furnishing of alcoholic or intoxicating beverages in the Grand Terrace City Hall lobby as part of the paint and sip class at the 38th Annual Art Show held by the Historical and Cultural Activities Committee pursuant to Grand Terrace Municipal Code Section 9.04.050. That's the end of my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Are there questions of staff at this time? Mayor Pro Tem Hesse.
The purchase of alcohol, is that going to be a local purchase with our local businesses?
The purchase is actually a donation by a local organization that will be providing gift cards for them to be in turn used to make the purchase locally.
So, I mean, where are they buying alcohol at where are they buying their supply at? Are they buying it from any of our local businesses?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, any request to speak on this item?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
All right. Becky Giroux.
Good evening, Mayor McNabeau, City Council members, residents of Grand Terrace. Deborah gave a beautiful explanation as to what we're looking for. And I think the questions were asked. We're really excited about our art show that's coming in May. We hope that everybody comes. Does the paint and sip? I recently attended one. I don't know if you have, but it was really a great event. And for the most part, what I saw was people ordered one glass of wine or one alcoholic beverage. It's a short term, and it's a thing. Riverside, City of Riverside does it. A lot of other cities do it. It's great to add to the art show. And so I just request resolution for approval, and that's all I have. If you have any other questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Giroux. All right, any other requests to speak during this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close the public comment period and bring it back to council for deliberation and consideration of a motion. All right, so no one's looking at me. I'm going to say I think this is a really creative addition to our art show. And I like the idea that it's limited. If you really want somebody to get the idea of painting something really nice, you really don't want them consuming a lot of alcohol. And so it's good to know that you've actually visited other cities and looked at how they were done. Councilmember Allen.
Will the paint and sip event itself, will it take place in conjunction with the art show, where those who are not participating in the paint and sip will also be there? Because if they're doing the paint and sip in the lobby, and where's the art going to be at for those who don't want to participate in the paint and sip to be able to participate in the art show? Last time we had an art show here, we had a lot of artwork from high school students and things like that. So if there's a paint and sip going on in the lobby, where are they going to be able to be at?
Mrs. Thomas, what are the logistics of this?
The logistics will be, the community room will be used. We'll have the council chamber locked, but we'll also be using the foyer here into the council chamber. The entryway, hallway, all of these, the book sale is not part of this particular event this year, so all of City Hall will be used in art, and then they'll have the paint and sip section over in the lobby area. That we wanted to keep that separate.
So it's not like they'll have to navigate through the paint and sip area to go to the rest of the area?
No.
Sort of like the casinos, you got to get through the one-armed bandits before you can get to the restaurant.
Yes, it'll be kept separate.
So, okay, thank you.
Further deliberation? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm wondering, during the paint and sip, we're going to cover our flooring so no red wine or paint gets on our carpet? What's the logistics on that?
I believe that actually it would be easier to just mop it up off the floor. We haven't really discussed that, but we could certainly, between our maintenance crew, we can get that, make sure that it's taken care of. Plus, we have mainly adults taking, and it's not children spilling all over the place.
So no tippy sippy cups for the adults?
I don't think that they'll be consuming enough to during that period of time.
I can't paint. I would have to drink a whole gallon of wine to paint something.
All right, so that does it for more questions. Any deliberation on this item and consideration of a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to what's the recommendation? To staff recommendation.
All right. Motion for staff recommendation by Councilmember Allen. All right. I'll second it for sake of further discussion. Any further discussion? All right, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor, before we do, on the agenda, the recommendation is consider adopting a resolution. So I just want to clarify that we are recommending adopting the resolution.
Should my motion be that council adopt a resolution?
Yeah, just to be clear.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney, thanks. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that the council adopt a resolution
As stated in the agenda?
as stated in the agenda.
All right, and I'll second again. Any further discussion? All right, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Robles,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hussey,
Yes.
Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Item number 2, City Council compensation, health benefits, and auto allowance. Ms. Noelle Carpenter, Senior Management Analyst.
Good evening, Mayor McNamara, Mayor Pro Tem Hussey, Councilmember Robles, Councilmember Wilson, and Councilmember Allen. Tonight, I present before you information in regards to City Council compensation, health benefits, and auto allowance. This is information that was previously requested by the council. I would like to note that this staff report supports goal number 1, ensuring fiscal viability by reviewing the applicable municipal and government codes in relationship to council compensation, health benefits, and auto allowance. Municipal Code Section 2.04.020 and City Council Health Benefits and Auto Allowance. This municipal code was enacted in 1978. The City Council, it states the City Council shall receive a stipend of $300 per month as provided for in Section 36516 of the Government Code of the State for cities up to and including 35,000 in population. Government Code 36516 allows for increases in City Council compensation. It states that increases shall not exceed an amount equal to 5% for each calendar year from the operative date of the last adjustment. The City Council compensation has been $300 per month for the past 44 years. The City Council also receives a $200 per month auto allowance and a health benefit equal to the CalPERS Region 3 Kaiser Single Premium. An adoption of an ordinance to approve the City Council auto allowance can take place as part of the budget process or at any other time that the City Council deems appropriate. We conducted a City Council compensation survey. This slide does present that information to you. As noted in the survey, the City of Grand Terrace is ranked number 7 amongst the 9 cities that were surveyed. And that's number 7 with the total compensation and auto allowance. The monthly average between the 9 cities surveyed is $777.77 per month. As you can see on the survey, we surveyed Grand Terrace. Well, we are Grand Terrace. We surveyed the City of Beaumont, the City of Calumet, the City of Colton, the City of Diamond Bar, the City of Highland, the City of Loma Linda, the City of Paris, and the City of Yucaipa. As requested, this information is being presented to you to review and make any changes as you deem appropriate. Any further questions in regards to making changes to City Council compensation or auto allowance can be further evaluated by our city attorney. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have one question.
Yes.
When you did your survey of the surrounding cities, how do we rank with respect to budget size?
Oh, well, the state does not take into consideration the budget of the cities. It takes into consideration the population of the cities. So
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you're comparing our compensation to these other cities.
That
And
is
so
correct.
I'm asking you not what the state takes into consideration, but I'm asking you, how does our budgets compare?
Our budget is comparable to Calamasa, a little bit bigger than Calamasa,
Okay.
but is certainly smaller than everybody, significantly smaller than everybody else.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff?
Well,
Councilmember Robles.
you know, on public pay, you can look up and see the smallest city probably is the city of Big Bear Lake. And going to my first meeting on training with the League of Cities as a council member, we happened to sit with a Northern California city manager. My point is, he said the size of the city doesn't change how much work the city manager does. So if you look at the city of Big Bear Lake, the city manager makes the same as our city manager, and our city manager is pretty comparable. What I saw on this is, and I studied a couple of years ago and was surprised. It seems to me the state, a number of years ago, decades ago, came up with a formula where it would be by population, and that you could do 5% each calendar year. And it just seemed odd that we hadn't done it, and a number of cities throughout the region have done it, probably have done it twice in recent years, and I know Redlands just did it. I'm uncomfortable with the survey because if you go into public pay, you see where there's a lot of money being padded in other areas. But I did ask our city manager how this compared to the CPI, because there would be concern about some years the budget's slow because we're in a recession, other years we're flush, and then if we just went the straight line. Do you have those numbers to share?
Yeah, if you just did the 5%, it would be $2,567 a month. If we did a 5% every year calculation as the state allows. If you do a CPI, and CPI is about 416% over that 44-year period, it works out to a $1,248 per month. $300 is $1,248 per month today. And, you know, of course, this is always a tough call of finding that balance between public service and being fairly compensated for, you know, time and effort. So it really is, that's probably why we see this spectrum too.
So just to clarify your answer to the council member, you're saying that the $300 when it was put into effect in 1978, those dollars to be able to afford what you could with the $300 back then, it would be comparable to $1,248. All right, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood what you were,
So yeah,
your comparison.
You can buy a loaf of bread for a loaf of bread type thing, yes.
Okay. Further questions, Councilmember Robles?
I just wanted to offer that I looked up the minimum wage for that year. It was $2.65. So this was a significant amount of money. So when you get to where we, no more questions on deliberation, let me know.
Okay, you got it. Further questions? Councilmember Allen, question.
My question is, do any of the cities surveyed, or to your knowledge, like, would it be common practice to have the annual cost of living increase that most employees will get throughout their employment? When I was in the military, that was something each year, we always looked forward to, was the cost of living increase that we would get. And it just was something that happened, it was, I guess in our situation, we'd have to have some sort of agreement on an amount, or if it was based on like what Councilmember Robles was talking about, the CPI.
Mayor?
Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, state law provides that we cannot have a automatic future increase, so we would have to bring it back each individual time, and the council would have to make the determination on what the percentage shall be.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that.
All right, further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment. Are there any requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, I'll close public comment and bring it back to deliberations. And Councilmember Robles, I believe you had something that you would like to add?
Well, on this thing, I think it should be part of an annual process that is automatically brought to the council. And the reason why is because if a council member is interested in a raise, how, it seems not very good that they'd have to ask for it to be put on the agenda. It seems that it ought to be something that we need to deal with, you know, on an annual basis. Because, for example, the law tries to even make it where we're not dealing in any self-interest. Well, the thing is like you have 2 that are up for re-election sometimes, 3 up for re-election another time. And so it becomes, I think, for a lot of years it was stalemated in cities because there was no apparatus to bring it forward routinely. I think we should strike some kind of balance. I think when the state said, here are the guidelines and this is what you can do, we should every year be consistent one way or another. Not vote a raise or vote a raise, but we should act on it. As far as trying to deal with this situation, I would like us to figure out, I mean, obviously the 5% each year, whatever, you know, to 2,500 and something, I would not be comfortable with that. But I would be comfortable looking at the 1248 and saying, well, Loma Linda's at 1066, so let's go 900 a month as a catch-up. But that we really need to make this a routine issue, just like we do anything else. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
You know, one of the things that I'm always asked, how much do you get paid? You know, they think we get paid just like the city of LA or not like the city of Bell, you know. But, you know, that's the big question. And I tell them, and then they're like, what? Why you do that? And I say, I don't know. No, I do it because we love the city. But it is. I mean, you look at it back in 1977, $200 is a lot of money. It's like, wow, you know, that was a big chunk of change. And 44 years, why it wasn't brought up? I mean, why it wasn't brought up? Because that was a lot of money until, you know, recently and stuff. And, you know, and then I think sometimes council members are afraid to vote a pay increase because, you know, it'll be held against them during the next election until people find out how much we get paid. Then they're like, wow, why, like I said, why are you doing it? But it is a 24-hour day, 7 days a week. My phone rings. I was on vacation and the phone's still ringing. And we do special events, and a lot of these things, when we go to these other boards and everything, it's a non-paid position. And that's why we have the car allowance, you know, to at least, you know, supplement somewhere driving everywhere. It does take time from the family. But one of the biggest thing is, I believe, is, you know, we're not going to be on this council forever. And you have to recruit well-minded, intelligent, you know, staff or residents to fill our seats. And, you know, you need some initiative, something. But I'm also wondering also at this part, you know, the planning commission, because they don't get paid 24/7 either. And they do a lot of work on it. You know, we need to look into that. That's probably a different agenda. I have to probably put that on there. But, yeah, I'm with Councilman Robles. You know, it's hard to give yourself or ask yourself for a pay raise. But I look back for all the stuff that we have done for this city. I mean, we're getting in a healthy budget. And, you know, some of you have been on here when it was dark times and you pulled through that, the city through that. We just got rid of the RDA, the first in the city to do that, and this whole state. You know, that's saving money. We do everything for our future, for the residents here. And, you know, I guarantee if you ask most of the residents, they probably say we do deserve it. I'm not, you know, like I said, it's kind of hard to vote on our own pay raise, but I think we're not asking for that much, so. I'm with Councilman Robles. I don't know about backup pay or all that pay, you know, because a lot of us, like me, I'm on a limited income what I can make with my retirement. So, but whatever the council wants to do, but I think it's time for a pay raise. And I also, I would like to probably, I'll write a thing for the agenda for the Planning Commission too, if this goes through. But thank you for bringing this up. And, you know, it's just, like I said, we do it 24/7. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think gone are the days when a whole bunch of people used to sit around on the pork barrels and figure out what's going to happen in their communities. We have looked over the last 40 some odd years, and it's gotten increasingly sophisticated. I mean, there never used to be an attorney at our planning commission meetings, and yet there's a need for it. We need to be able to kind of keep up with the times, and I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Hussey. We're not talking about a ton of money here, but realistically, I think it is a good incentive for us to keep ourselves up to date. Some of these things, these activities that we go to, we don't get a dime for doing that. All we do is just get whatever the cost is, and we don't even see the money in our pockets. It goes for a room or whatever else, and it takes a lot of effort. And I just don't think that the generations that are behind us are going to put up with this kind of nonsense forever. 44 years without a raise is kind of ridiculous. So I would agree, though, that the $1,200 range that was thought of so far as a straight application of cost of living makes sense. We do this because we love the city. But let's not be stupid. I mean, we also do it because we like to work within the system. We like to create things. We're all type A personalities. We've proven this many times. And if we weren't doing that, then we'd be putting our efforts into something else and make a darn lot more money doing that. So I think it would be a fair situation, and the way I see it, we have a mechanism to do this. And so I think those points are all valid, and I'm not going to become a rich man off of it, but I think it's about time we look at it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that it was Councilmember Robles that mentioned, I believe you did, that you felt like this is something that should annually come back to us. And I would agree with that, even though the state says that we can't make it automatic, that it should just be an agendized item annually, that at a certain time it comes before the council, you know, as an agendized item on the agenda for a, you know, simple cost of living increase in the future, for the future.
I'd like to see that come back around budget preparation time.
Yeah, sometime like that.
It can be within the context of what the upcoming budget's going to be.
But at least it should be addressed annually.
No,
just addressed.
I agree with it coming forward annually to deliberate on, but I also think in the context of the budget that makes
amounts can be debated and that sort of thing.
And it makes for
based on current events and what the budget says. Because in the past we've certainly shown, So I agree that with your point, Mayor, and Ms. Robles.
One final comment.
Councilmember Robles,
You know, I know that most of us are retired now, but when my first term, we were facing insolvency, and some people were working, and we were doing routinely 4 o'clock meetings. And I know some people said they had to defer, you know, being available for extra time, compensation at work. I know I was asked by my supporters to stop selling real estate because of RDA. There was a feeling of unethical behavior. And for me, you know, real estate, I couldn't see where I couldn't have two masters because real estate's not predictable as far as a schedule. So if I had a client that needed to be bidding on a house on a Tuesday, that wasn't going to work. So, and there's, again, you know, lots of things beyond the two meetings that are research and, you know, attending, and there's obligations for us on training. And, you know, this is the beginning of midterm of my third term, and I know there's others that, you know, will be going up for re-election for a third term. So we're beginning to, you know, be where we're going to be possibly gone. And we need to have some kind of compensation so people that have to make a trade-off with work, you know, have it. I know I had two friends that served on the San Bernardino City Council, and they had to eat up all their vacation time. They met during the workday. So, you know, it's a big commitment, and I think this council, and I think myself too, have been instrumental in pulling this city out of the jaws of almost not existing to being in a really comfortable situation. And when you elected us, you hired us as an employee. People don't realize that. You hired us. We're an employee.
So is there a motion in there, Councilmember?
Yeah, I'll move that. What is this? Can we make a motion for compensation or to come back?
You can make a motion to specify an amount,
Okay.
And then we'll bring back an ordinance with that amount. A couple of thoughts before you do. First of all, the comment about bringing it back annually, we could put that in the ordinance just to require that staff bring it back for budget discussion each year. Second point is, under state law, the increase would not take effect until after the next election. So for this year, for example, it won't take effect until later in November, December. But with that, if we do it every year, it won't take effect that year. It'll take effect potentially a year and a half later. So that's just something to keep in mind. Not that you can't consider.
If you guys can wordsmith it where it fits in the right.
Well, I think the point is we should discuss it every year. I think that's the direction of the council, but it may not take effect relatively soon. It may take effect a year and a half later. The third point is the calculation. So the Attorney General provided in a pamphlet a few years back that the League of California Cities had handed out how to do the maximum increase. So the way the AG determined it was the number of years since your last update, so in this case 1978, so it's 44 years, times a maximum of 5% each year. So I calculate that's $660. So $660 plus the existing $300 would be $960. That would be the maximum that you could increase it.
Okay.
So just want you to be aware of that before you make a motion.
Okay.
Also, with the motion and the city attorney, that we include the car allowance as part of the ordinance and the health benefit as part of the ordinance, so that's included and codified and very clearly stated, just like the rest of the benefits package.
Okay.
Correct. One clarification. Yes, so we're gonna, based on the direction of the council, we would bring back an ordinance amending our current law to reflect the current amount. It would also specify that we would do the review annually during the budget season. City manager is correct. We're also recommending that as a cleanup item that we specify that the car allowance be codified in the municipal code per an AG opinion recommending that. With respect to the health benefits can be done via resolution, but we would recommend having that adopted as well with any changes And that can take effect immediately because that is not considered income.
What was the number for the catch-up?
So the amount that I had calculated was $960 is the max.
Okay, because I wanted to make a motion that we adopt the amount of $960. It's comfortably behind Loma Linda.
So that's the amount that comes back to us in, okay. And so are you making the motion for all the recommendations from the city
Yes.
attorney?
Okay, and from our city attorney? Yes, and also to codify the car allowance and to bring back a resolution on health and welfare benefits for the city council.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Robles, second by Councilmember Wilson. Any further discussion?
I do.
Councilmember Allen.
I just want to ask, there's something in my memory that we had a discussion along these lines at a previous council meeting, but we didn't pass any kind of a resolution or anything on any kind of a increase, did we?
Mayor, my recollection is at least since I've been here, I don't recall that coming to the
Okay.
council.
I think it came as a future agenda item for us to consider bringing this back for the discussion
that's
that
what
we're
this
having
is?
tonight.
Okay.
That is
All
correct.
right.
And as the council may recall, I also provided a memo to the council on each of these issues a few years back.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
probably where the discussion
That's- yeah.
you're thinking of.
That's all. Thanks.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hesse?
Yes.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. All right, our last item on the agenda is to adopt revised special events ordinance. This will be presented by our city manager, Conrad Bolowich.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you. So this was also a future agenda item that was asked to be brought back. We're trying to, on a side, we looked at these future agenda items when I got here, and some of those, I think they're very distant future, so they've been put off for so long, and we're going to try and clear some of the decks on these. That's why maybe to Councilman Allen's question earlier, that you heard it before in the distant past, and we're trying to get these future items caught up. So, as to special events, the ordinance that we have today was adopted in 1997, and it addresses every special event just the same. So it doesn't matter if it's Ringling Brothers shows up with the circus, or the sip and paint at City Hall. They're treated as one-size-fits-all type activities. So we looked at this to kind of break up the events and deal with them in an appropriate manner for the appropriate size and activity. How does this go forward? There we go. So in the existing code, we do address aerial events, balloons, parachute shows, those kind of hang gliders, those kind of things. They are prohibited throughout the city. We recommend that they stay prohibited. This is an urban, suburban urban area, and we'd like to avoid having people drop in unexpectedly as a result of the event. So we would ask that continue to be prohibited. Street events, so these are the kind of things, marathons, bike races, 5K runs, those kind of things where we close down streets, impact traffic, and impact the circulation in the city. We currently address this in the code. We would like to keep that at a 30-day review process. We feel that process is long enough so that other agencies, it's not something we can do internally, fire, sheriff's department, emergency services, and other agencies need to weigh in on those impacts. We have some requirements that the application has as far as what they need to give us. And then, of course, the Sheriff's Department has review of this as far as street activity and closure. The current ordinance does not have the sheriff's review in this, so that would be an addition to it. There is no current provision for food or food preparation as part of street events. Since I'm not a big 5K runner, I don't know if that's normal, that there are food activities, so that's something that we could take direction, and do we need to address, food preparation or food before or after, something like that. Right now, our fees are, I had it just written down, what is it, $640, I believe, for the special events fee. We recommend that fee stays the same because there is a significant amount of staff time involved in evaluating the event and doing the preparation. And then again, any direct costs for law enforcement, fire, other things. So if they need 4 or 5 sheriffs, if they need a fire truck to stand by, whatever, that the event has to cover the direct cost of those impacts, including our public works people if there's road closures or anything. The other one that was kind of the big one, and this we treat it as, in the current code, it's called special events. We're looking at to break that as community events. These kind of things that really impact the community as a whole, fairly large activities, rodeos, circuses, cook-offs, the things where there's, couple hundred people show up, and it has impacts on life safety, on being able to have, manage the flow in and out of their parking, traffic, and so some of those type of activities. So we're looking for a 30-day review process, just like with a street event, because there's multiple agencies tied to that. This one in the current code, and actually all of our events, require background checks, which we just haven't done or don't do for the smaller events, for key individuals. And that's primarily for these promoters and events that bring people from outside the community and are fairly transient or itinerant groups, and we want to make sure that we're not bringing in elements that are bringing problems into the community as part of that event. So we'd like to keep that background check in place. These events do allow food preparation and sale on site. Got to go to the circus, and you need to. Everybody wants to get their popcorn or something as part of the circus or as part of a cook-off, so we are having that. And there are restrictions specifically tied to this for health, safety, and life safety as far as cooking and ride inspections. Once again, we review a really broad spectrum of activities, and then we recommend that we reassess the fees for this and probably raise what we're looking at for the cost for that, because there's so much review involved, everything from sanitation to public health to fire and police. And then again, they would also cover direct costs for that event. The new piece that we've carved out is what is a special event. So these, and by definition, are events that exceed what the facility is designed to do. And so the best example I have as a kind of an analogy is if a church has seating capacity for 500 people, that's not a special event. They're designed to hold 500 people. When they move those 500 people out into the parking lot and have a church bazaar and a rummage sale, then that's a special event, because the parking lot is not designed to allow emergency access to handle that and to deal with that. So we need to treat that as a special occurrence. Although it's the same people, the same site, we're overloading that. So that's the criteria. It's something that is out of the norm for what the land use and for what the facility is designed for. We'd like to look at ideally a 14-day review process. Most of these are internal reviews, so that we can do it fairly quickly without causing too much hardship for the promoters. We're removing the background check requirement, these smaller events. We just don't see a reason to do extensive criminal background checks and prohibit felons from having a church, a bake sale, and it's very restrictive. It does prohibit the sale of and preparation of food as part of the event. However, there is an exception for a ministerial waiver. The planning director can waive that for a charitable or a community benefiting event. So what the idea is that we're not creating an event that is is taking away business from local businesses, that we're not creating an event that is driving food activities and creating, probably getting into that community-based event type thing. But we do allow for the smaller charitable groups to participate in that. And then we do recommend that for these, because there is some review time, but the charges are fairly onerous for small events that really do add to the fabric and the flavor of the community and just what it is to live here, that we either reduce those fees and ideally completely eliminate them is just part of what it is to operate here in the community. And that is it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Polowich. So for that last one, if a community service organization or a charitable organization wanted to say have a pancake breakfast as a fundraiser, would that be part of your perhaps a ministerial waiver?
Yes, that's the purpose for that. That, you know, we're there to be a pancake breakfast or some event.
Fish fry or something.
Yeah,
like that.
something. If the Rotary Club wanted to have a fish fry or something like that, then that would be something that's waivable. But if the grand opening at the mattress store doesn't need to be, you know, bringing in food as part of that. It's a different type of activity.
All right. Further questions? Councilmember Allen.
Just real quick, Mr. City Manager, thanks. On page 277, the paragraph label background, right at the last sentence, it says the fees for all events are $310 per event. And then right down below there, under street events, it says that it is recommended that the fees remain at $620. And the reasons given for both are significant staff time related to review. So I'm just wondering, what constitutes a doubling of the fees?
So what we've done is for the smaller events to try and you know, administratively take the burden off of smaller events, is we use call it a land use permit, and then we're able to charge a lower fee rather than a special event. Kind of put it in that, but it's really kind of circumventing the purpose and the true intent of the ordinance. And we'd like to get away from not doing that as a routine process and really treat these as the way they're supposed to be.
Okay, so, all right, thank you. I just wouldn't want the fees to get in the way of an event, a nice event for our city. You know, I know the fees are necessary, you know, to cover the cost, and I appreciate that certain organizations will get reduced fees because of the charitable.
Actually, for all special events, there would be no fee, regardless of the type of organization. When you get into the community events and the street events, yes, there's a fee because there's a significant amount of staff time to do the planning for that. But they encourage the smaller community groups to engage and do things in the community.
So it's like the upcoming art show that we were discussing earlier, is that like one of those small groups that we're talking about right now, or is that like a significant special event?
Well, it's a city event, actually.
It's a city-hosted event, but were the upcoming art show to be, were to happen at a church or a meeting hall or some other place, then it would be a special event. We'd have to treat it as such, which really kind of defeats the purpose of having those smaller events.
Yeah. Thank you.
Questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, City Manager, for putting this together. But my question is what about fines? If somebody said, well, I'm going to go ahead and do this food court or this event and play ignorance is the law, you know, I didn't know anything about you needed a permit and stuff. I mean, what's the process for us to get them on the right track if you come up to them that day? And what would be their fines if they don't want to comply, and how we enforce it if they don't want to comply?
It's for everything except the special event, it's a shut them down. It's not a fine. I mean, the fine is the cherry on the cake for that. For special events, we would, depending on what's going on, either treat it as a code enforcement violation, and but ideally, and what I've done in the past is it gets shut down. And then we get to start over, because the purpose for the special event is that there is some component that triggers that has a life safety, fire safety, community impact that we need to mitigate one way or another. If you're putting 200 people in a parking lot with a bunch of easy-ups, they need to have a certain amount of separation between them. We need to figure out what we're going to do with the trash. We need to figure where the parking is, how we get the cars in and out, and if somebody has a heart attack, how we're going to get to that guy. And that's what the purpose for these permits are. So if somebody circumvents that, it really becomes a life safety issue that we shut that down, and then they can try it again.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor, for asking. I think this is similar to the situation you guys faced over there in Loma Linda, where I guess they had a very small amount of forecast for cars, and then all of a sudden they ended up with about 10 times that many cars. And so I can understand it to be a sensitive issue, and it could get out of proportion.
One of my finer moments, yes. We filled up 5 stories of parking structure with a small car show in the middle of COVID, yes.
And they didn't have food there, right?
There was no food, yeah, that's right.
Further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll ask if there are any requests to speak on this item.
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for deliberation and consideration of a motion.
Mayor?
Councilmember Allen.
I'm reading the recommendation. It says to direct staff to provide ordinance language revising Grand Terrace Municipal Code, Chapter 8.50. So I'll make a motion to direct staff to provide ordinance language revising Grand Terrace Municipal Code, Chapter 8.50.
All right.
Second.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Allen, second by Councilmember Wilson. And any further discussion? All right. May we have roll call vote, please?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
We have a comment by our city attorney. Yes,
yes,
sir.
Just to be clear, so the recommendation on the agenda is rather vague, but the staff report does lay out very well what the recommendations are. So just to be clear that the recommendation is to implement and codify all the recommendations set forth in the staff report.
So that would be to direct staff to come back, to provide the recommended ordinance languages in the staff report revising Grand Terrace Municipal Code, Chapter 8.50.
That is correct.
That's my motion.
Thank you.
Was that your understanding, Councilmember Wilson?
Second concurs.
Okay. Very good. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey?
Yes.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
you.
All right, City Council communications. Oh, we don't have requests for future agenda items tonight, so council communications, beginning with Councilmember Jeff Allen.
Thanks, Mayor, but I don't have anything to report this meeting.
All right, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Doug Wilson.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Celia Robles.
Yes, I have a report, and I just want to make some comments on Dr. Thomas Rivera's passing.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I met Dr. Rivera in 1971 when I was an 18-year-old college student. He was very instrumental in my life. I had a difficult time with completing college because I had a child at 19 and I got divorced at 20 and I got remarried at 21. So, and I had 2 more children. So family issues were actually I enjoyed being a mother and being married. And he always encouraged me to continue, and I appreciate that from him. He was also very instrumental in making sure that there was future leaders that were recognized and nurtured to make sure that they went on to college and any barriers, financial or social, were dealt with. He lived in Grand Terrace for decades, He was about 82 years old, and for half of that time, he was in a wheelchair because of Guillain-Barré. He had an innate ability to see the glass half full, whereas I always saw it half empty. But, you know, with his passing, some thoughts have come. When I look at Zillow and I look at our ratings for our local schools, I think it's something maybe we ought to be concerned about. And, so I think, the call with his passing is that people like me that see the glass half empty, maybe we should look at the reason why it's not more full. And I just want to extend my condolences to his wife, Lily, and his children, who grew up with my children, so it was kind of funny to, because he had children a little later, to be kind of co-parenting at the same time. And even when I remember being like 61 and going to their house for signatures for one of these races and being chastised. And I says, I can come here and always feel like a little kid. So that was, he's going to be sorely missed, and he left a fine legacy. With staff, we had a Zoom call with the National Orange Show people. They're going to have a rave the 25th and 26th. Usually I'm not home, but I'm going to be home that time because my son said there were still issues with noise. I want to compliment staff because our Lieutenant Lane, our city manager, the code enforcement people from Loma Linda, oh my God, they were so on point with asking all the questions that they needed to ask to be able to protect the citizens here. And I appreciate it. But we're going to have 55,000 people at this event for 2 days. We kind of get the runaround. They take measurements of the noise at my house and at Conrad's, but they never share the data with us. So we were pushing for the data because they're like, well, complaints are down. Well, I know firsthand from people that talk to me, some people have moved, some people have given up. And it's just not us that they call because they called Assembly Member Reyes too. And her home has the vibration and the low bass. So one of the things that I told one lady to do and I'm doing for myself is you can get, and Lieutenant Lane knows about, you can get free online, a free decibel measure. And for this city, it's what, 50 decibels?
Correct. 50
So it's
decibels.
50. So if your meter's above that, they broke our noise ordinance. And there was a gentleman that wrote to me, and he said that he looked and looked, and that he felt that I was the only one that had brought this up over some years, and he thanked me for it. And I just want staff to know that it's important to me, and I think it's important to everyone that represents the voters here, to really get the data that we need and solve this. Right now, the complaints line has them going directly to them. So we're not really in control of the complaints because there's no middle person. And my recommendation is that we need to, in the next rave, have staff work overtime on a volunteer basis, or, have some people direct those calls so we know exactly what's going on. So that's my report.
Thank you, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem.
So he has a beautiful tribute to Dr. Rivera. My prayers go out to his family and for comfort. As far as the rave thing, I called a couple times on there, and I don't think anything got resolved. That was before you guys, we did a subcommittee with everybody, but even wearing hearing aids, I don't really hear, I could feel it. And it seemed like it's always really prominent the last hour before the whole thing's over on a Sunday. They just crank it up and they say, okay, we're done. Well, we won't be back here till the next time. So, but please, call that hotline. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and they do the surveys. I know a lot of us get, complacent. It's like, oh, here we go again. I'm not going to call. I called last time, but call the hotline and do complain. And then crime's gone up in this state and in this nation, because I went and got gasoline the other day in Barstow, and I was surprised about that, so I feel like I was being robbed, but anyway, that's an inside joke. But, prayers with everybody, you know, and just have a blessed week, and God bless. Thank you.
Oh, if I may add, they did bring up that when guest artists come, I mean, when the top billing artists come, they have their guest engineer. So it was kind of like, yeah, it's going to get louder when the headliners are up. So we, you know, and they're kind of like, well, we don't have control over that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Councilmember Robles. I do not have a report tonight, so we'll go to City Manager for his communications.
Sure, just not to beat a dead horse, but the rave is coming this weekend. Just for on the record, there's a hotline number. It's 323-739-4342. That's directly from the rave promoter. Please call that number, and they will ask you for your location. What they'll do is they have mobile sound measuring crews out there. They can then come to where you are and take the readings. And as Councilmember Robles said, we are beating them up to get that data. And if we can get the data, not just from her house and my house, but from everybody that's affected, we can create a map that then shows at least the noise. I'm going to editorialize a little bit, but I'm with Councilmember Hussey that it really, to me, is not the noise; it's the vibration. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that they've come forward and been able to create a way to address the vibration. Mm-hmm. So we're working on that. But anyway, please use that number. Please call if there's an issue. Somebody's causing vibration over there already. That's funny. Please call that number and have them come out and do the measurement on site so we can get a good map of what we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have no closed session tonight. Good work. So we will be adjourning, and a reminder that we are closing in memory of Dr. Thomas Rivera. Please keep him in your thoughts and prayers, as well as his family that survives him. So we will adjourn to our next regular City Council meeting to be held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the City Clerk's office, and the request will be processed in accordance with council procedures. We are adjourned.